So before the fire drill, we were discussing what? Investment. So we're looking at how the value of real GDP is determined, isn't it? And we're looking at a two-sector economy where you have households and firms. And we looked at households' behavior that is captured by aggregate consumption, C, and we're also, looking at firms' behavior, which is captured by the planned investment, R. Right. So just to recap, what is investment? What does investment refer to? Go ahead.
The value of any unsold inventory a business has, and any purchase of plants, equipment,
That's correct. So investment refers to purchase of plants, equipment, structures, and unsold businesses. Isn't it? So we are looking at planned investment. Planned investment or desired level of investment. So businesses plan investment ahead of time. They know how much they want to invest next year, for example. Right? So they'll plan ahead of time. However, the actual investment or realized investment may or may not be the same as the planned or desired level of investment. So planned investment may or may not be equal to your actual or realized investment. So, why that might be the case? Why actual investment might turn out to be different than the planned investment? And the answer lies in the definition of investment, planned investment. Anybody? Go ahead.
Planned investment is what they plan to invest, but if they don't sell enough, they put more in inventory and they have more investment, which is the actual investment. It's not really the same as what they.
That's correct. That's exactly what is going to happen. So businesses plan ahead of time, right? And let's say they want to invest $200 million, right? So that's within their control. The only thing that is not in their control is how much they end up selling in that year, isn't it, of the finished goods that they are going to produce. And that depends on consumers, isn't it? Consumers will decide how much they want to buy of a firm's output. So that component of investment, inventory, right, change in business inventory, is not fully controlled by the firm, because that decision is made by the households, how much they want to buy. I mean, that decision can be influenced by the firm through advertising and other information, dissemination mechanism, but still, it's consumers' decision. So if they don't buy enough, the firm will have more unsold inventories, and actual investment might be more than the planned investment, isn't it? So that's the basic difference between planned level of investment and the realized or actual investment of the firm. Now, for our model, we'll continue to assume that businesses have, control over their investment for the time. Okay. So, we are just going to focus on the planned investment. So I will refer to the planned investment. Okay. However, actual investment will come into the play, as you will see soon, when we look at the equilibrium level of GDP in the goods and services market. The adjustment is actually taking place through change in the inventory. Okay, so we'll look at that. But I here, whenever I write I, that refers to your planned investment. Okay? And we'll assume that planned investment is given to us, even though investment depends on a lot of factors like consumption. Investment will depend on a lot of factors. So investment can be a function of GDP or income, aggregate income, isn't it? If aggregate income is higher, businesses are more likely to invest in the economy, isn't it? Because they know that people have enough income to buy their product, right? So investment will be higher. So you can expect a positive relationship between income and investment. Okay. Also, what else might drive investment other than aggregate income? Anything else that might drive investment?
Interest rates?
Interest rate, that's correct. Interest rate is the cost of borrowing funds, isn't it? And most of businesses borrow funds to invest. So interest rate is a key driver and it's negatively related. Higher the interest rate, lower is going to be the investment spending. Okay? And also you can put theta here, which is your, what does theta refer to? The animal, it captures, the sentiments of people, wave of pessimism and optimism in the economy. Okay. So all those factors will drive investment spending. So, as I said, I'll keep this model very simple in chapter 8. We'll keep it very simple so that we understand how GDP is determined in the economy. We'll worry about the complexities later, in later more developed models. So I'm going to throw all these things up for the time being. I don't care about it. What I'll do, keep investment as predetermined. So investment is given to you. It's exogenously given to us. So what it means is that it's already determined. We know the value, so we're going to use that. It's not determined within the model. Okay? Then we would call it endogenous. If the value of the variable is determined within a model, you call it endogenous. And here, the value of the variable is given to us. We know it's predetermined. We call it exogenous variable. Okay? So for the time being, we'll treat investment as an exogenous variable. We know the value is predetermined. So if that's the case, then if you plot it against aggregate income, so you got investment here on the vertical axis and aggregate income or real GDP on the horizontal axis, what would be the shape of planned investment curve? What would it look like? So it does not depend on anything. So let's say I tell you that businesses plan to invest $100 billion, right, next year. All the businesses put together. That's their investment spending. So as I said, we are treating investment as an exogenous variable. It's predetermined. You know the value. You plot in this space, what would it look like? It does not depend on aggregate income. So if you draw the investment curve, what would it look like? So what I'm saying is that no matter what the GDP is, aggregate income is, planned investment remains at $100 billion. So how would this curve look like here, if you plot it?
It'd be a horizontal line.
Horizontal straight line, isn't it? That's correct. So let's say $100 billion is here, the straight line, that's your investment curve, or it's a straight line. Right? You can call it curve 2. So no matter what the income is, aggregate income is, investment remains at $100 billion because it's exogenously given to us. It's an assumption. We are saying that investment does not depend on anything for the time being, just to keep things simple. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So now we know a little bit more about the behavior of firms now, which is captured by investment. So we know something about households through consumption, their behavior, consumption behavior, and now we know something more about firms' behavior that is captured by investment. Okay, and our objective is to find the real GDP. How much is the real GDP in the economy, or how the value of real GDP is determined in the economy? Isn't it? So next, let me define equilibrium condition in the goods market. So first we'll look at equilibrium condition in the goods market. When I say goods market, I'm also referring to the services. Okay, so just goods market, but that services is implicit in it. So the equilibrium condition in the goods market is given by the following equality. So aggregate output equals to the planned aggregate expenditure. So on the left hand side you have aggregate output, which is denoted by which letter? Aggregate output.
Y.
Y, that's correct. So aggregate output is denoted by Y, which is same thing as your aggregate income, real GDP, all those things we can use here interchangeably, as I said at the outset. And planned aggregate expenditure. Expenditure by all the sectors in the economy. Plan level of that. Okay? So we have two sectors, if you remember, households and firms. So expenditure by households is captured by consumption. So write C. And then expenditure by firms is captured by R, isn't it? So that's your equilibrium condition. Y equals to C plus R. So whenever you have equality between these two variables, aggregate output and planned aggregate expenditure, the goods market is in equilibrium. Okay? Keep in mind that this equality holds only in equilibrium. This is true only in equilibrium, not otherwise. Okay? So the goods market will be in equilibrium, a state of balance, only when aggregate output Y equals to the planned aggregate expenditure C plus I. So that's your equilibrium condition. But that also gives you what? GDP according to the expenditure method, isn't it? If you remember, Y equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, right? We have just two sectors, so this is your GDP using expenditure method. So that's your equilibrium condition. All right, so
what did you say about GDP according to
expenditure method?
Okay, thank you.
If you remember, C plus I plus G plus X minus N, right?
Yeah.
For a four-sector economy. We have just two sectors right now. All right, so it is possible that you may see something like this at some point in time. Y is greater than C plus I. So what it means is that the aggregate output in the economy is greater than the planned aggregate expenditure, isn't it? This inequality is telling you that aggregate output, the value of goods and services that we produce in the economy, exceeds how much households and firms bought in that year, isn't it? So what will happen as a result? In the economy, the production was greater than the consumption, isn't it? Think of this as consumption by households and businesses, isn't it? So you produce goods and services, Y, and that's greater than what people bought and firms bought. So what will happen as a result?
You have a surplus.
You have a surplus of what?
Good.
Goods. And what do you call it? When you're not able to sell your finished product, what do we call it?
Inventory?
Inventory, isn't it? So whenever you have a situation like this, we have an unplanned increase in inventory. Can you see that? So this results in an unplanned increase in inventory. Also referred to as business inventory. So that's a possibility. It might happen in the economy, and that's not your equilibrium, because Y is not exactly equal to C plus I. Or you might see something like this: Y is less than C plus I. What is happening now? Think along the similar lines, like the first one. Now you're saying aggregate output is smaller than the planned aggregate expenditure. Or in other words, households and firms bought more than we produce in that year of goods and services, isn't it? How is that possible? Households and firms are buying more in a given year than we actually produce of goods and services. How is that going to happen?
Be less inventory?
See, if you remember, businesses like to keep a desired level of inventory as well, isn't it? So for example, any auto dealer you go to, right, you will always see a lot of cars in the lot, isn't it? They have that. That's inventory. And they maintain a certain level of inventory. So anytime a new customer comes, they have a lot of cars to choose from, isn't it? They don't go and order one when the customer comes. They have a lot of cars most of the time, right? That's your inventory. So businesses like to have certain amount of inventory all the time. We call it the planned level of inventory. So what happened here? In this case, inventory has decreased from the planned level, isn't it? All the firms in the economy will see their stock of inventory depleting from the desired level. So the dealer wanted to keep 100 cars in the lot all the time. Now he has only 50 cars. Can you see that? So his inventory, is depleted because it was oversold in that particular period. So we have an unplanned decrease in inventory. All right. So these are two disequilibrium conditions, right? In one case, aggregate output exceeds planned aggregate expenditure. In other case, the aggregate output is smaller than the planned aggregate expenditure. And whenever they are equal, both sides, you have equilibrium in the goods and services market. So is that fine with everybody? How we characterize equilibrium in the goods and services market? And what is disequilibrium? All right, so next let's look at how the value of real GDP is determining the economy. And we'll use several approaches to understand that. First, we'll look at a graphical approach to the determination of GDP. And after that, we'll use, construct that table. We'll go back to the table we were using last time, GDP, Y, C, and I, all those things, right? We'll use that information. And after that, we'll look at a simple algebraic, approach, use some math and find equilibrium. So those are all easy, concepts. So let's focus on that next. How the equilibrium is achieved in the goods and services market. Okay, so let's go back to our example we had last time. C was equal to 100 plus 0.8 y. And let me give you investment, which is predetermined, exogenously given to us. Let's say it's $100. Okay? It does not depend on anything. We know the value. So that's the information you have, and based on this, you know consumption function, you know investment function, isn't it? Based on this, you have to predict what would be the GDP in this economy, what would be the value of output in this economy. And we can do that. Using this information, I can tell you for this economy what would be the GDP in equilibrium. So let's use the graphical method first. Okay. So graphically, what is happening is, so you got Y over here, which is GDP or aggregate income, aggregate output, and you have C and I over here. Both consumption and investment are represented on the vertical axis. Okay. So basically, you're looking at planned aggregate expenditure on the vertical axis and aggregate output on the horizontal axis. Think of it that way. Next, let's plot investment. Investment is given as $100. So if I plot in this space, what would it look like? I've already drawn it for you. It's a straight line. So investment, let's say, is $100 over here. So investment line is this. So that's your investment function. And after that, I need to plot consumption function. And we did this in the last class, right? So can you tell me where would consumption function start and what would it look like? Go ahead.
It'd start at 100 and go
It would
up.
start at $100 and go up, isn't it? It's positively slope. The slope is 0.8. What is 100 here? What does it mean for consumption?
So your starting investment?
Consumption is, so 100 is, what is 100 in consumption function? What does it represent?
How much you're spending.
How much you spend when
Your income is zero.
your income is zero, isn't it? Autonomous consumption. All right. So let me plot your consumption function. It will start at same at 100 and has a slope of 0.8. So let's say that's your consumption function, positively sloped. Okay. Now, planned aggregate expenditure, if you remember, is the sum of consumption expenditure and investment expenditure, right? So we need to add these two lines to get the planned aggregate expenditure line, or C plus I line. So we need C plus I line, which is your planned aggregate expenditure. So if I add I line to this consumption line, what would the resulting line look like? So you're adding the two lines here, C and I line. What would the resulting line look like? Can you tell me? So add this line to this line. What should the resulting line look like? Anybody? Go ahead.
Wouldn't it be parallel to the C line, just up?
By
100?
That's correct. It would look exactly like C line. It will have the same slope because this has a geo slope, isn't it? You're adding geo slope to 0.8 slope, right? So the resulting line will have the same slope, 0.8, isn't it? The only thing, the starting point would be 100 plus 100, right? 200. So the C plus I line would start at 200. So let's say 200 is there. And it would look exactly like your C line. So this is your C plus I line. And that's your planned aggregate expenditure, the right-hand side of the equilibrium condition, C plus I. Is that fine with everybody so far? Now next we want to find out what is the value of real GDP or aggregate output in this economy. Right? We know planned aggregate expenditure. So we know equilibrium takes place when aggregate output is equal to C plus I line, planned aggregate expenditure line. So to find that level where they meet, we need to draw a 45-degree line in this space. So let me draw a 45-degree line. So your 45-degree line is like this. It doesn't look like 45-degree line, but assume that's 45-degree line. What it does is, your 45-degree line, what it does is bisects the area, this plane, C, I, and Y plane, into two equal parts. Okay? So this is your 90 degree, right, over here, and you are drawing a line in the middle, right, bisects it, 45 degrees, that's 45 plus. So basically it bisects the area into two equal parts. So I can draw it a little flatter. So how do I do that? Something like this, that would be 45. And so this line makes it C plus I line. So what 45-degree line is doing is, it is telling you, so at any point on 45-degree line, pick one point. So let's say you pick this point over here, right, on 45-degree line. So if you go this direction, you have the value 100, isn't it? The same value you will have on the horizontal axis. This is also going to be 100 because it divides the area into two equal parts, isn't it? So if you're lying on the 45-degree line anywhere, whatever the value you have on the y-axis, that's what you will have on the x-axis. That's the whole purpose behind drawing this 45-degree line. So, the values on the x-axis as well as on the y-axis, they are the same at any point on this 45-degree line. So now you can see, we know that equilibrium in the goods market is basically equality between aggregate output, which is on the horizontal axis, and planned aggregate expenditure, which is on the vertical axis, isn't it? So, by definition, your equilibrium in the goods market must lie on this 45-degree line, isn't it? Because you want equality between both these variables. So it has to lie on the 45-degree line. That's the whole purpose behind drawing 45-degree line. So the equality between planned aggregate expenditure and aggregate output, as you can see, takes place at only one point, and that point is here. C plus I line intersects the 45-degree line. You draw a perpendicular, from there you get the value of GDP, which is the same thing as if you come all the way here. That's your C plus I. So C plus I, whatever value you have over there, is the same thing as Y star. Right? And that's your equilibrium in the goods market because both values are equal. Aggregate output is the same as the planned aggregate expenditure. All right, so is that fine so far? Okay. If something is not clear, let me know. I'll go back to it. All right, next let's look at the adjustment process. So why is this equilibrium? That's the question I'm asking, right? I defined equilibrium as equality between aggregate output and planned aggregate expenditure. But why is that the case? Why is this the state of balance? That's what we mean by equilibrium, right? Two opposing forces are in a state of balance. So why this and not some other level? Why this Y star is the equilibrium GDP and not some other number? some other value of y. Let's check that. So let's pick some other value. So I'm going to pick, take some other color. Okay. Let's look at this. Let's say you are picking some value here, y1. Okay. Let's say GDP currently, aggregate output is y1. Okay. So what happens? At y1, you draw a perpendicular, go like this. This is your 45-degree line, isn't it? And your planned aggregate expenditure actually exceeds y1 by this much. Can you see that at y1? Because c plus I equals to y1 will be here. If you draw like this, that will be your c plus I. But c plus I, as you can see, corresponding to y1 is this much. So it exceeds. So the condition you have over there is y is less than c plus I. Can you see that here? At y1, planned aggregate expenditure exceeds aggregate output. So what is happening there? We discussed that earlier. Go ahead.
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So once you get the C plus I line, you
Mhm.
kind of forget about the C and I line.
Yeah, you forget about
The
them
red and
altogether.
blue
Yeah,
line.
yeah, don't worry about that. They are, their purpose is to just give me the planned aggregate expenditure line, C plus I line,
Okay.
because we are trying to find equilibrium GDP. Yeah. All right, so let's come back to y being less than C plus I. What is happening there? So what you are telling me is that households and firms are buying more than the economy is producing, isn't it? So what is happening to inventory? Is decreasing, isn't it, from the plan level? So the level of business inventory is falling from the desired plan level. So what would you expect businesses to do? How would they respond to it? Would they step up production or keep it unchanged, or would they decrease it? So businesses have falling levels of inventory, right? So a car dealer usually likes to keep 100 cars in the lot, now has only 50 cars, isn't it? What would he do next?
Increase the production.
Increase production, isn't it? So when inventory level falls below the desired or planned level, firms would step up production. They'll increase production to go back to the desired level of inventory, isn't it? And therefore, all firms would behave in that manner, and aggregate output will increase. So GDP, if you are here, will move in this direction because firms are going to produce more, isn't it? So that's your adjustment process. So if you are below Y star, if currently economy is producing less than Y star, that's one, less something like Y1, businesses would experience a decrease in the inventory levels from the desired level, right? And they would like to go back to the desired level of inventory, and therefore they'll increase production. And that would increase output, aggregate output, or in GDP. And that's what is happening. So you move from this in this direction towards Y star. So clearly Y1 is not sustainable, isn't it? It's not a state of equilibrium because we are moving away from it, right? We are not sitting at that point. Firms would respond to this equilibrium by producing more. So you move to another high level of Y. Now let's check another point, and that's your, over here. Let's say you are producing, currently economy is producing more than Y star. Okay, somewhere here. So you are producing Y2. Now what is happening? Something like that. So this is your 45-degree line, the black line over here, and this purple one is your C plus I line, isn't it? So the difference is, what is the condition here? Which one is greater, Y or C plus I? y is greater than c plus I. So over here, y is greater than c plus I. So now you see that aggregate output is greater than the planned aggregate expenditure. What is happening to the inventories now? Too much inventory, right? More than businesses have planned to keep, isn't it? So the car dealer planned to have 100 cars, now he has 150 cars, isn't it? More than he can handle. He doesn't have space now. So what would you do? Cut back production, increase production, keep it unchanged?
Would cut back on production.
Cut back production. Firms would decrease production because they have a lot of unsold inventories. They didn't want that much, right? So they would start decreasing production to reduce the level of inventory. They are not able to sell it, so the only thing you can do, you can cut back on production so that you don't add more to it. And over time, you'll be able to sell whatever inventory you accumulated. So their response would be to cut back in production. And all firms would do that in this kind of situation, and GDP would fall, move in this direction. So what you see here is that it doesn't matter where you start from, y1 or y2, you gravitate towards which value? Y star. That's your equilibrium GDP. Okay? So this is your state of balance. So what you just learn here, that it's very simple how the value of GDP is determined in the economy. It's all because of businesses adjusting their production level in response to disequilibrium in the goods market, isn't it? It's as simple as that. And that tells you what the value of GDP would be. So this is your graphical way to look at the process of how the value of GDP is arrived in the goods market. But we'll do more. We'll look at concrete numbers now. We have the information, and I'll tell you what this Y star is equal to. If you had plotted this information on a graph paper, you would know where the intersection is taking place, and you would be able to read off what is the equilibrium level of GDP, isn't it? We don't have that advantage of graphing it on the graph paper, but I can always use the numbers and solve for it. So we'll do that next. Any questions so far before I move on to the numerical version of how GDP is determined in the goods market, how the value of output is determined? All right, so let's go back to our table. We had that table. So we had Y, C, and I'm going to give you I. So Y was 0, 100, 200, 300, and so on. So these are different levels of GDP. And consumption, using that consumption function, 100 plus 0.8y, you will get 100, 180, 260, 340, 420, 500, 580, 640, 720, 800, 880. Okay? That's from the consumption function. C equals to 100 plus 0.8y. And investment is given to you. At every income level, investment remains unchanged. That's our assumption. It's exogenously given to us. So I'm going to give you investment at 100 throughout. Okay, so you have all the information to find out what is the equilibrium value of GDP, or aggregate output, or aggregate income in this economy. So what do you have to do next? Can you tell me?
Add C and I.
Add C and I. If you do. That's what we did in the graph, isn't it? So add C and I, and then look for equality between Y and C plus I. Wherever they are equal, that's your equilibrium GDP. So you need to add C and I. And tell me what is the value of GDP. So what is the equilibrium GDP?